more people to get a quorum. So meanwhile, we're going to start.
I mean, there's a lot of things on this agenda that are briefings.
Yeah.
Those could proceed, no problem.
Sure. Let's see, I need the time. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:11 on March 29th. This is the Jan.K. Platt Environmental Lands Acquisition and Protection Program General Committee meeting. It's a routine meeting in March that we have. And I thank all of you who are here. We're short for a quorum, but I have asked Dan and Zach, as we start the meeting, to come up and explain to you how we are working this today.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As was said, my name is Dan. I work with Hillsborough County Communications. Just trying to kick off the meeting and help you out a little bit. A few things that we do ask for our virtual participants. If you're not speaking, to please mute your mic. If you're not muted, we will hear you, and it will cause a distraction for everybody else trying to speak. For the participants in the room, you have speakers in front of you. Right now, they should all be red if you're not speaking. When you do wish to speak, just click down on that button right there. That little microphone is going to turn green for you. That means that your mic is live and we will be able to hear you. You'll be able to hear through the speakers here, and our virtual participants will be able to hear you on the meeting as well. When you're done speaking, just click that button again and you should see red. Our saying is red is dead, green is good. Any questions? No? Anybody have questions on our virtual meeting? Good to go? All right.
Okay, what I'm going to do to start with is to tell you that we do not have a quorum at the moment. We have 10. We need 12. I'm going to ask each person in the room that's a member of the General Committee to state their name, starting with Joel Jackson.
Joel Jackson here.
Eileen Park.
Kurt Brown.
Push your button so it's green.
There you go.
Eileen Park.
You don't have to pick it up.
Kurt Brown.
Leave it,
Mike
leave
Kelly.
it on the deck.
Sally Thompson.
Russell Kahn.
Jack Berlin. Joe Gidry.
Megan Nixon.
And the staff person that's in the room with us is our wonderful note taker and organizer, Keisha. Thank you very much, Ms. Gilliard, for being here. There are people that I see on the screen that I know to be members. You all are seeing each other on your computer screens. So those of you who are members of the ELAPP General Committee, would you state your name, starting with Glenna? Is she not? Okay. We are not hearing you. There.
Glenda Keith.
Yes. Fred. Fred, are you muted? Does he have a sound turned?
There we go.
Okay.
It's Fred Webb.
Michael? John? John Keith?
John Keith.
Okay, up in the left-hand corner is Miss Vinnick, Pam Vernick. And, you know, I think what I'll do is I'll just say the names of the people I see there. Pam Vernick, Glenna Keith, Fred Webb, John Keith, Michael Hewitt, Tom Reese, and the two of you at the bottom, tell me your names. Don't know who they are. I
They
don't.
might not, they don't see the same thing you do.
They don't.
The gentleman with the guitar.
Rocky Milburn.
Did you hear his name?
I don't know if I'm at the bottom, but this is Doug Deneve.
Oh, you're Doug. Okay, thank you, Doug. And the gentleman in the light blue, media blue t-shirt.
I'm assuming you're talking about me, and my name is Rob Northrop.
Thank you. Yeah, you show up on the other invited members, so. And then a staff person that should be there, of course, is Ross Dickerson, our attorney, Susan Fernandez, and Tom Reese, a guest to speak with us. So, who?
Forrest showed up.
Did Forrest show up?
Yeah.
Forrest, are you there? We'll say yes.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. Ah, there you are in the corner. That's a good place for you, keep you in the corner. Okay, well, I think what we're going to do is go through some of our just conversation things to hear, because we can't take any votes yet unless we get 2 more people here. So we can't approve the minutes, but I do want to talk to you about our sign-in sheets. Keisha needs everyone in the room to sign the sign-in sheet with their name, address, their name, email, cell number, home number, work number, and if they're a member or a prospective member for ELAPP. So I know everyone in the room has already done that. I'm wondering how you want to get it off of here, or can you pull this up at a later date and see it?
So I can pull that up.
You
I'll
can.
be able to pull that up.
Okay, so you'll have
To
the
see who attended
information.
the meeting.
So if anyone on there has new information that we don't have, I would appreciate it if you would email it to Keisha. And I think you all have her email because she corresponds with each of us that way. So that's the first thing that we can take care of. We could hear Tom Reese's report on the South McDill. We can't take an action, but as I recall at the last meeting, Jack Berlin made a motion to accept it. Let me see if I can find it. We were waiting to see if the city and the county came to agreement with Forrest and all. So Tom, are you prepared to speak to this today? Tom Reese?
I can speak to what I wanted to come to talk about is just an update from the last meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, most of you guys were on this in the last meeting, in general committee meeting. I gave a presentation of the former McDill 48 ELAPP site. If you'd like, I can share my screen. I have a very abbreviated version of what I did last time, and I can give you the update with the last slide or two.
Well, I didn't get
You can
much.
share the screen.
Do what?
You can share the screen.
He can, what does he do to share the screen? Does he do something or do we?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all done. Okay.
Can you see
Okay.
the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second.
Do you want to sit here?
Can you still see it?
Move up.
You can sit here. I'll move.
No, she can sit maybe right over there with, and leave your mask on. Speaking of which, if you are behind a plexiglass screen, members that are here in the room, you do not need to wear your mask unless you prefer it.
Everybody's had vaccinations.
Okay.
So can you see the screen now, the full screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when you're ready, it's just going to be a few minutes to go through this for any case
Okay.
anybody was not at the last meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right, Jan, thanks. McDill 48 was a former ELAPP park purchase, and I wanted to talk about this project that's going on with the city of Tampa, both engineering and parks department. And so with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. McDill 48 is on the Inner Bay Peninsula, just north of McDill Air Force Base. This red box shows the 48 acres that was purchased in 1992 by ELAPP for the city of Tampa. You can see it's surrounded by a lot of development. And this is the sign of the project. So in 1992, like I said, the ELAPP purchased this property for the city of Tampa, 48 acres in pretty good shape, Ocam, pine flatwoods, wetlands on there, but it had some issues. And so in 2003, the city applied for an FCT grant to buy this property, reimburse ELAPP so they can buy more property. And that occurred. And so then the city owned the property through FCT funding. Now, the good thing is FCT required the same restrictions or covenants that ELAPP would have had on this property, which means it's a passive park. It's supposed to be preserved for in its natural state as much as possible. It also was supposed to get removal of exotics, and there's some wetlands that need to be repaired on site. They're drained, and some gopher tortoise habitat, but all of it same conditions that ELAPP had when ELAPP purchased the site. FCT added additional requirements to the city that they definitely rehydrate the wetland in the middle that had been drained since the 1940s. And they also, if they're going to do that, that they try and improve water quality to Hillsborough Bay, because all this area around here is untreated. All the runoff just goes directly into the bay. So if there's a chance to use this site to improve water quality to Hillsborough Bay, they should do that. And so nothing happened for many years because the city's Parks Department didn't have a lot of funding. At the same time, for them to do that, they had to work closely with the engineering department, stormwater group, because stormwater is running underneath the site out to the bay, so they can't just do it without some help. So now stormwater department got some funding, and so now we can finally get this project going. We got brought in to help with it. We did mapping out here. If you're going to do some sort of water quality improvement project on here, rehydrate the wetland, we are going to work very sensitive, in a sensitive manner to come up with a design that avoids all the good habitat and it has the smallest impact possible. These images, these polygons, there's a lot of the mapping that we did on site. On the one on the right shows pretty similar to what's on the left. The only thing that's added to the one on the right are the gopher tortoises areas, and then there's small little circles that I can probably highlight right in here. These are the gopher tortoise habitat areas. The yellow is pine flatwoods. The green are major groupings of large oak trees, and that includes the shaded area here. And the blue are the two wetlands on site. This is the one that's been drained since the 1940s. There's a drainage system comes in here, goes underground, drains this wetland, and then goes straight out to the bay. So now that stormwater is involved, we have a chance to fix that in addition to all the other things that are on here. The purple are solid areas of Brazilian pepper, so we try to aim for that. Working closely with this site map, we were able to guide the design. And this is a design that I showed you in your last meeting that shows the permanent pool, the blue, dark blue, the littoral shelves around, and you can see how we avoided as best as possible all the big oak trees, the very large hammocks of very big oak trees, and we mostly were able to avoid the prime flatwood areas, these two yellow areas, and of course we're going to improve the habitat on the two wetlands. And indirectly, we're going to get rid of the Brazilian pepper. And so that was a really good design. We think that really did the job. You can tell right away, this is not a rectangular pond or a square pond that you see DOT do. This is one that was well designed to avoid all the natural resources as much as possible and provide a new habitat on site, which is wetlands and an open water feature. The next graphic shows just the open water feature and a trail system that was envisioned. And so that was what was approved back in your last meeting. And the reason I'm here is just to give you an update. And the update is a very good update, I think. Working with the engineers, this flowway that comes in here, it's already ditched. So by them incorporating this part into the pond, we're able to reduce the pond footprint from 30% of the site down to this shape, which is just over 21% of the site, 10 acres. The other 38 acres are going to stay as upland and in fact actually finally be enhanced. There's too much biomass out there. It needs to be cleaned up. We need to improve the habitat for the gopher tortoises, restore this wetland, enhance this wetlands, and put the trail system in. So they went from a 30% impact to 22. So now we have 78% of the site still intact as its native habitats, and it's laid out to avoid the most pristine habitat out there. So I think that's a really good improvement. The yellow line is that drainage system, underground drainage system, which will be completely removed. Now stormwater will come in here, get cleansed and cleaned up before it goes into the bay, which is one of the requirements of FCT. And for a lot of entities that are around the bay that are trying to improve water quality for Hillsborough Bay. So that's pretty much the latest. We have had meetings with FCT. They like what we've done here. There's been an updated management plan from the one that was written in 2000. It was paid for by the city of Tampa, but they were first in control of all the site. And so that's the latest. We have to have one more presentation to FCT, and then we'll get their approval because they see that we're addressing all 10 of their requirements. These are the requirements that FCT had. A number of them, like number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, and 7 were all which were on here that ELAPP had required, and so the additional ones were added to rehydrate the wetlands, improve water quality to the bay, in this case Hillsborough Bay. And so I don't have anything more to say except give you the update that the pond is even smaller now, and this is going forward. And at some point, there's public meetings coming up. At some point in another year from now, I'm sure they're going to try and go forward to get the permits to do that. And I will stop there and answer any questions that I can.
I just have a point of information. Can we get that presentation, or is that presentation available for us to download or copy or whatever?
Sure, the shorter one is smaller enough that I can just email it to you. The larger one, which had a lot more details that I presented last time, it's pretty large. I can't email that, but I can just email you this one if that's what you are.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thanks, John.
Sure.
Tom, before, when you did the presentation before, there was a lady that was very adamant about not changing the whole thing. Was that resolved as far as letting her know exactly what was going on?
I can't speak for her. We've had a couple of meetings with her. We've invited her to have a special meeting where we can hear her concerns. She's used to riding her bicycle through this area all the time and really didn't think it needed any changes. But there are a lot of exotics out there we'd like to improve, as ELAPP wanted and as the city of Tampa wants and FCT wants. We know this habitat needs to be improved. If fire happened in this property, not only would it be catastrophic to the 48 acres, it would likely threaten the homes because there's so much biofuel out there. So this site really needs some improvement. I think she's more comfortable with the way it's laid out right now. I can't speak for her. There's going to be a public meeting in May. I don't know if it's coming up. And so there's another chance for all the public to weigh in on this. But so far, it's been just one person that had concern.
Thank you.
Question, on slide 1 that you had in your presentation, where is that sign located?
It is located on the north entrance off the Skyview Park. And I'll show you this on the map. This right here, there's this rectangular area, the Skyview Park, and if you park along the road here, that's the entrance. That's one of the entrances. That's the one where the sign is.
Okay, so then why does the city have it designated on McDill where you go, there's a fence and no signage and no entrance?
I don't know why that is that way. This has been an issue a few years ago. There was a lot of vagrants on site and a lot of trash was brought in. So the city actually closed it up for a few months so they could get truckloads of trash out of there and get all the encampments out, and the city police department got rid of the vagrants, and then now it's again open during daylight hours. So that could have been why. I don't know exactly why otherwise.
I have an answer for that. I was the one that gave it the name. At the time, coming off of McDill was the only access that we had.
Thanks, Joel.
Okay, now if I want to bring.
Could I
everybody back
ask a
up.
question real quick?
Go ahead, yes.
Tom, talk to me about sediment. You're now talking about a stormwater system. How quick is that pond going to fill?
Again, the engineers can answer exactly that, but I can tell you the elements of it. Where the water's coming in on the northwest side right now through the pipe system, when it enters this open water pond, it will have a sediment sump, so that velocities will slow down, so the sediment loads will dissipate right in that hole, and then at whatever frequency they can go out there and dig that sediment.
Yeah, okay, all right. They'll have to pump it out, because that's the number one problem city of Tampa has is sediment. So.
Yeah, sediment and whatever else is coming in here. With the littoral shelf that's surrounding the entire pond, we'll get a lot of biological treatment. We'll have a lot of habitat that's not out there now for wading birds and that kind of avifaunal species. So I think it's an improvement to the site, and it's really an improvement to the bay. And again, the site itself needs help. The gopher tortoise habitats in those areas, I don't see how they're surviving. It's so thick in there, you can hardly move around with natural and non-native species.
Comfortable? Okay, now, where do I go to get back to all the people?
Ask them, I'm sure.
Where is it? Can you Tom, can you unshare us?
Yes.
And then we're gonna talk and bring all our people back up, hopefully. Susan Fernandez, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
At our last meeting, Jack Berlin made a motion to approve and accept the City of Tampa's conceptual presentation pending their final plan for the committee's final approval. The motion was seconded by Megan Nixon, and the motion passed with no opposing members. Can we pass this, or do we have to have a quorum for this? Do we have to have another motion, or can we accept this?
So to take a vote, again, you will have to have an in-person quorum. So if the motion that was approved before, you've received an update to the information, but if that, it sounds like there was an adequate motion that was seconded and approved, I think you can probably ride along on that prior motion. I don't have an objection to doing that.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna, what I would like before we go there is to ask Forrest, since he studied this back in the 1990s, would he like to give us his opinion at this point as to the position that has been taken by the city, and I assume the county involved, and your input, Forrest?
Well, thank you, Jan. Yeah, regarding the conceptual plan that Tom laid out, I'm pleased that it was reduced significantly in scope. Tom, I think you mentioned it came down at least, 10-15%, if not more, in terms of acreage. So obviously the smaller the footprint, the better. And with that, I really like how they're following the existing stormwater path through the site, which comes in from the northwest, follows through a central point, through the center of the site, all the way out to McDill. And when you look at the wetland that Tom had shared and its location and shape, it really does follow that path. So very pleased to see the reduction in acreage and also the fact that they're really concentrating on the stormwater path itself, removing Brazilian pepper, and doing as much as they can to stay out of the native oak hammocks as well as the pine flatwoods where the gopher tortoises are. It's an even better plan than what I saw 6 months ago, and very pleased to support it just like I did back in October.
Dan, give me your email address, please. Thank you. So, everyone, we do have Jack's motion from last time, and I just read it to you. I can read it again, or we can just say we're going to approve this by consensus of those who are here. So, is there a consensus to accept the recommendations that have come from Tom Reese and Forrest? Russell?
Yeah, I had one question. 6 months ago when we had the last meeting, I had asked about the gopher tortoise habitats. I can't really see from this distance all of the new map. Is it sufficiently far away from their habitats, all of the locations where you guys found them, where it's not going to impede their growth?
And the answer to that is yes. In fact, they took that whole southern lobe out, and that's where most of the gopher tortoises are. So they have actually more freedom to move now than they did in that first version.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. By consensus, are you all in agreement to accept the previous motion and send this on?
Yes.
Is there anyone who objects? Thank you. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Susan and board members, for getting that one done. The scrub balm addition overview of possible future water pipeline easement. I assume that's just for information, so someone could report on that. Cheryl, are you there, or Carol?
I am here. I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, committee members and chair, we want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to be able to come before you today and share a little bit about our project for the Water Resources Department. My name is Cheryl Robish. I am the program manager for the One Water program that we have going on within the county and the Water Resources Department. With me today is going to be a couple of other speakers, because what we would like to be able to do is share a little bit of background on the South County One Water program, and then also share with you the route alignment study that we have done over the past 6 months or so that has brought us to the conclusion that this could be a possible and feasible alignment to be able to put our water line or our pipeline in through some of the ELAPP property down in the South County area. With me today is the owner's advisors, which is Carollo Engineers, Chuck Sinclair, who is the project manager for this project for Carollo, and then also Ricardo Barromeo, who is going to be sharing the study work that he had done on the alignment. Just quickly, if you're not familiar with the One Water program, it's about $1 billion program to be able to bring water and wastewater services to South County to be able to meet some of the growing needs down there. This particular project is a potable water transmission main, which is a 42-inch main that will be connecting to our existing 42-inch main right at the intersection of Big Bend and Balm Riverview Road. It'll then extend south, and you'll see this as we present the route study to you. It'll extend south along Balm Riverview Road to 672, and then takes 672 over to a hairpin and gets on, this is the base route right now, Balm Waimoma Road, down to 674 and then over to 301. What it's doing is basically creating a loop for us to be able to increase.
Cheryl, do you have a map? Because we're just seeing your introduction page.
I sure do. Why don't we go to slide 3?
Thank you.
So not to start over, but you can see the arrowhead at the top of the page there. That's Big Bend and Balm Riverview Road. And like I said, it extends south down to 672 or Balm Road, and then goes back to the east just a bit, and then drops down and goes south along one or two different alignments, and we're going to show you some of those today. But this alignment that you're seeing here goes down Balm Waimama Road to 674 and then over to 301. Like I was saying, what this does is it basically provides us an opportunity to be able to have a loop in the system so that we can meet some of the increasing pressure needs and also water needs down in that area. What I'd like to do now is basically get Ricardo and Chuck to run through the route study that we did so that you can see the work that's gone into trying to figure out where we could possibly put this line for just to reduce impacts now and in the future. Chuck, do you want to
Yep.
come on, or is it Ricardo that's going to?
Yep, I'm ready to go, Cheryl. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
I'm gonna black myself out and let these guys talk.
Okay, so I'll just pick up with Ricardo, back one slide just to kind of give an overview of what our presentation is today. So Cheryl's given you a good background and kind of the objectives of our project. We'll talk about some of the routes that we identified, the process we went through to evaluate those routes, and then just summarize it at the end in terms of kind of where we are and where we think the opportunity is for working together with ELAPP. So Ricardo, go ahead to the next slide. Again, this is basically providing an interconnect loop to existing water supply system down in the South County area. The big arrow coming down is basically through a separate project. Tampa Bay Water will be delivering treated potable water to a location there. You can see as a new potable water facility where then we'll interconnect up from Triple Creek down to the Sun City area. This will be a estimated 42-inch water main that'll be this interconnect. So go ahead, Ricardo. On the top part of that slide, you can see the green area just adjacent to the blue arrow. That is ELAPP property, and we've coordinated with Forrest and Ross and the team there, and we have a pretty good plan of how we can minimize our impacts to any ELAPP property there. But kind of the area in the yellow oval is really what we're going to focus on today and looking at some of those opportunities. So we looked at a variety of routes, and hopefully you can kind of see it will highlight the different areas. We looked at this in 3 sections. So the first section, go ahead, Ricardo, is the just getting the water from the water new water treatment facility down to Balm Road. Then the second area that we looked at, there you go. Yeah, the second area that we looked at is, sorry about that, is another series of routes to go from Balm Road down to State Road 674. And you can see we looked at an assortment of routes from going down Balm Waimama to we've had some communication with TECO to see if we could work something out with them and their quarter. That's that diagonal line that you see the cursor pointing to. That there's a direct connection from Balm Road to down to State Road 674, and then also looking at opportunities with the ELAPP property to maybe through a minimal impact, but through possibly going through ELAPP. And we'll talk about more about that. And then the third area is basically connecting from, once we get down to 674, go ahead, Ricardo, to the next slide. To get from State Road 674 over to the Sun City area. So we're going to talk about each one of those and what we found out in our route analysis. So we'll kind of zoom in on each one. Oh, before we do that, let's talk about what we're looking at in terms of non-cross cost criteria. So you can see there's 6 different criteria that we looked at. Environmental criteria, environmental impacts, and that would be impacts to wetlands or protected species or habitats. And we would have some quantitative measure of what the impacts would be from an environmental standpoint. We also looked at property and right-of-way, and in other words, access through public right-of-way versus permanent easements and land use, either existing or future projected land use, whether it be residential, commercial, et cetera. We looked at the duration, the overall amount of time that it would take for each route. In some cases, the route might be longer. It may take longer to construct a project. In other cases, because of regulatory constraints or regulatory requirements, it might take longer in the permitting. So we looked at evaluating the duration of the project in terms of those criteria. We also looked at utility conflicts and where there may be existing utilities. TECO is obviously a big one there. There's other water lines, telecable, et cetera, that we'd look at potential conflicts and impacts related to that. And then public impacts. This is obviously an important one. During construction and then after construction impacts that then may be received by the public. And then looking overall at functionability and reliability. For a potable water line like this, we want to be able to, for forever to be able to access the line to make sure we can maintain it if there happen to be any disruption in service, to make any repairs, et cetera. And we also looked at safety issues for crews that are performing the O&M and also during construction. So those just an overview of the criteria that we followed there. I'm not going to go into all the technical details in the evaluation, but I did want to pop up a few slides just to give you an idea of kind of the analytical approach that we took to this. And one of the first things we wanted to look at is the weighting of these non-cost criteria. So you can see there that of each of the 6 criteria, go ahead, Ricardo, to the next slide. The way we evaluated these is we looked at, and this is just one example, we kind of looked at each criteria head to head against each other. So in this example, if you look down row E for public impacts and you compared it to environmental, we just looked at simply from the standpoint of what do we think is the most important in terms of weighting. So in this particular case, you can see that environmental A outweighed public impacts E. And if you just kind of continued across that row, you can see for public impacts, it beat out. It was higher weighting for property and right-of-way. It was higher impact for C for duration, D for utility conflicts, and public impact. So when we did that exercise for all 6 criteria, comparing them against each other, you can see, I think the next slide, Ricardo, you can see that the highest weighted impacts were for duration and for public impacts, with public and right-of-way and environmental be right there, very close to it. So really those 4 were, and it's pretty intuitive that those 4 would be the most highest impact. We felt pretty good about our ability to manage utility conflicts, and also the functional reliability were something that got less weight. So that's just kind of an idea of how we identified the relative weight. And then, and go ahead, Ricardo, we'll show an example. This is just an example of, again, how we tried to do a quantitative analysis of each one of these. So for environmental, you can see that if 40%, now low number is bad and high number is good. So from 0 to 5, if 40% or more of the area was impacted, then that received a score of 0. And you can see likewise, if there was no impact, then that received a score of 5. So and then there's a grading scale in between those. So that's just an example for each one of these. We kind of tried to put a quantitative measure to each one of those. And again, we don't have the time, and I don't want to bore the audience here with how we did that for each one. And so go ahead, Ricardo, to the next slide. Once we got that, you can see that we looked at, for each route, we kind of basically created a spreadsheet table. Next slide. And shows, this is an example of the different segments. Each one had its own score, and then we could do a quantitative evaluation of each one of those. So that's obviously too small on this slide, but just a screenshot of the spreadsheet that we used. So now I want to go through real quickly how we did the route analysis and kind of what we discovered in the route analysis for each one of these. And there's, again, those 3 segments: getting from the new potable water facility to Baum Road, getting from Baum Road down to State Road 674, and then down from 674 over to Sun City. So the first one was pretty simple, going from the potable water facility, which is the blue shaded at the top. Incidentally, the pink shade there is a property owned by TECO, and we looked at several different routes, including just coming down from the potable water facility, that yellow line down Baum Road. We looked at cutting across private property, which was a straight line down to green, and then we also looked at going with TECO and seeing if we could get some right of way there. And we looked at all 3 of those, and what we came up with is essentially, drum roll, here we go. Yeah. Essentially, they are basically all similar. It's a relatively short route. We would have to acquire some right of way either from private or from TECO versus public right of way, but that's offset by by having a standalone utility easement. So, relatively speaking, for all 3 of those, they're close to the same. Where the interesting one is next, where we looked at the routes from Baum Road to State Road 674. And just to orient you, the gold shaded area are the 2 ELAPP parcels that are currently there. And you can see they're immediately west of the TECO easement that runs diagonally all the way from Baum Road down to 674. That's that pink line. And then that bright pink area right in the kind of the middle of the screen there, that's a relatively new TECO solar farm. And so you can see if we try to make a direct line from Baum Road all the way down to TECO, we basically, to 674, we basically have going down TECO easement. We have going down private property on the west side or east side of TECO and then through ELAPP. Or we have in the blue line to the right, we have the ability to go down Baum Wamama. Obviously, that is a longer route, and which has a lot more impact to the public through the roadway system. And then we even looked at a route all the way out east to Carlton Lake Road, and so we looked at a wide range of all these. So when we applied our scoring criteria to those, go ahead to the next slide, Ricardo. We applied our scoring criteria to those. What we discovered is that ELAPP and TECO routes scored higher. And basically the reason why is because the impact to the public during construction and then even after during operations and maintenance of the line was much higher by going down through the public road right away. It would be impacts to traffic. However, that's offset by and also, by the way, if we look at putting in public road right away, one of the things we're really concerned about is if that road ever need to be widened for some reason, then, and we have our water main in that right of way, then that could impact, and we might even have to relocate or construct, roadway on top of that. And that's not a preferred option when you have a utility, especially a large utility like a 42-inch water main. So that was some of the reasons why the roadway, public right of way, scored lower. But of course, also with the need to acquire property either through TECO, private property, or go through the process that we're here to talk about today with ELAPP could take more time. So that's why the duration scored a little lower on those. And then finally, the last, and that's what we did here. And again, not expecting you to understand these, but we looked at several variations of going through the ELAPP parcels as well. And these are just examples, just kind of showing you that we looked at a wide range of different things. And then the other area that we looked at was getting kind of from the southern part of the ELAPP property over to Sun City area. This is a real challenge because, I mean, as we refer to it as downtown Wamama, it is very, very, a lot of heavy traffic. There are a lot of residential units, a lot of restaurants, businesses. I mean, the post office, there's a lot of big old trees. There's utilities in that corridor. That's going to be a real challenge to go down State Road 674 to connect to Sun City area. So we did look at another option, which would be going on the northern boundary of the residential property there. And you can see we've called out the possibility of going under a wetland area there. But what we would want to do is stay along the edge of the ELAPP property there and maybe tie back into West Lake Road on the west side. So when we looked at those, again, that ELAPP route, which hopefully is now kind of becoming obvious when you look at our scoring system, that ELAPP route scored higher as a better alternative than going down State Road 674.
I want to ask you a question.
That's perfect. That's perfect timing because we're going to pause here for questions. So go right ahead.
Where you have your new potable water facility,
Mm-hmm.
the distribution lines are where?
So right now there are no distribution lines from the existing potable water facility. So what we're looking at, and this project is not anticipating any additional distribution lines. This project is simply putting a big force main or transmission main to interconnect 2 points within the existing system, again up at Triple Creek, down through this new potable water facility where Tampa Bay is going to deliver water, and then interconnecting down to Sun City. So there are no distribution lines for new water service intended as part of this project.
Thank you.
What are the disruptions that would occur for the users of this preserve?
Good question. So what we've worked with, and we were even out in the field with Ross on Friday, what we're looking at is potentially doing underground boring, or a technique called horizontal directional drill, where basically we would have an endpoint where we would open a hole, and we would have an endpoint at some additional area that could be anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 or 8,000 feet away, and we literally would bore a hole from one point to the other underground, and then grab the pipe and then pull the pipe back through. So the only impact to the ELAPP property or any of the users of the ELAPP parcels would be just during construction at those 2 points where we would pull the pipe from, and there would be a couple of days where we would actually lay out the pipe to just connect it all together, and then to be able to pull it under. So we would minimize any open cut. So during construction, there'd be very little impact to the ground surface. It would just be the points where we would connect the drill. And then in the future, there would just be where those open pits would be. We would have an access location. It would probably be fenced off. It would have air release valves. It would be very, very little intrusive in terms of being able of impacting, and it would be away from any use in environmentally sensitive area.
Does it impact any of the bike trails?
How many acres, ELAPP acres, are we talking about this pipe?
Well, based on what I just described in terms of the construction and the permanent, it would be probably less than an acre, less than 2 acres for sure, and it would be very, very concentrated, a very small part. And I think, and Ross, you can jump in here. I mean, currently right now there's no actual use, recreational use for this property, but I'm sure there's some plan for the future.
Let me ask. I understand there's a huge need for water in South County because of all of the overdevelopment. However, for all of the people that moved to South County that now want water, well, they had to expect the pipelines getting put in. So the impact to the people that live there, well, they chose to continue to move there. So I personally think that the ELAPP land should be left alone as much as possible. And this is what the residents have chosen to draw on additional water source. So it needs to go through that. And it also should have a build out if it continues to develop. So I think the further right path has other access points that might be useful for further development if they continue going down that route.
Just to answer the question on public use, Kurt, this is actually one of the handful of sites that is not open to the public at this time because it's undergoing restoration. So if this project could be done in coordination with the restoration, which we're expecting to take about 3 years, it would not impact any current public use of the property, And since everything is underground, it would not impact any future trails on the property or restoration of the property.
So this is different than the bomb scrub that has the biking trails.
That's correct. This is Bomb Scrub. You're thinking Bomb Boyette Scrub. Bomb Boyette Scrub has biking trails.
Okay. Which Bomb Boyette Scrub is the biggest embarrassment to the ELAPP program because of the lack of facilities there and the lack of the county stepping up to it.
Okay.
Ross, on this, if it were to go ahead, is there some way that restoration could be somewhat paid for by the folks that are doing this?
Absolutely. Those are all the discussions that we're currently having. So we're discussing, of course, restoring the areas of impact where the drill is going to have to be, and then also maybe giving some extra funds towards more restoration on the property as we continue to restore.
But how much would have to be restored where the drilling is going to be? What kind of condition is it in right now?
Right now, it's actually all Kogan grass, so it's not in the best of condition. It's an old tomato field that we're getting ready to restore. So definitely the 2 acres of impact where the drill is going to be would have to be restored to the same standards that we're restoring the rest of the site.
And it's 2 acres we're talking about?
That we don't know exactly yet, but it'll be most likely 2 acres or less.
Right.
Impact.
It'll be minimal impact. The only thing we'll have there is a relatively small, 30 by 30 foot, area that we would want to have, just for access for air release valves that are needed to just operate a water main of that site. And we want to have a hatch or an access point if we ever needed to get into the pipe.
Ross, has ELAPP land been used for utility transmissions before?
It has. We did a similar project up at Cypress Creek Preserve where they brought the gas line through. I don't know if the committee probably remembers that, but they had like 100 by 100 foot squares where the rig was, and then the pipe went underground from there. So yes, it has been used for utilities in the past. We prefer that it stick to the edge of the property so that it doesn't impact the center portions of the property. And one thing I would like to clarify too is this is just being brought to your attention now, just in case ELAPP is selected as the possible route. But right now that has not been determined.
Ross, can I ask?
Let me ask another question. Who's paying the final bill? Is it Board of County Commission or Tampa Water?
This is a county project.
So the restoration, then, if the county's paying it, then the county's paying it.
Correct.
So is this pipeline going to make it possible for more development to happen in South County because of the water you're bringing down?
Yeah, Cheryl.
Safe bet.
This pipeline is actually a transmission main to be able to help support the existing low flows that we have right now and low pressure. That does not mean that there isn't going to be additional growth in the future, but this particular line right now is to help get us a loop so that we can stabilize the pressures down in that area because they're falling rapidly because of the growth.
Because there's too much development going down here and the infrastructure can't support it. I don't see putting a line of ELAPP land to make it possible to develop more land down here.
Would you identify yourself, please?
Glenda Key, member of the ELAPP committee.
Thank you, Glenda.
Yeah, there's a second point here is if you build it, they will come, and then the cost of future ELAPP sites will get more expensive because we'll be competing to purchase those against developers' interest in.
Correct.
It's
one thing to remember.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I need, before you speak, if you're not in the room with the members that are in person at the meeting, please identify yourself before you speak. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I say something, Jan?
I want the gentleman that was going to speak or started to speak to finish his question.
I think he was answering.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I just had two questions for Ross. One, is this on, I can't see the map from here. Is this property edge only?
Yes, it's property edge only.
Okay, and then my second question is, they'll need access, they'll need right of way, they'll have to get, I assume that if there's a break or something that we're calculating what impact that amount of water or would have and the access would have on the rest of our property?
Sure, that would all have to be accounted for, but I learned on Friday that this pipe is going to be about 50 feet under the ground. So it may not ever even make it to the surface. If it breaks, and they're most likely not going to have to dig down to get to it, there's other options to fix the pipe when it's that deep in the ground. But yes, Jack, that's all being accounted for. While we say there's only about 2 acres of impact, there will be an easement that goes along with this pipeline.
Tell me about the potable water facility. I see the pretty shade of blue up there. I assume it's not a reservoir. It's an actual facility to treat the water and send it out, but there has to be storage tanks, right?
Yes, that's a piece of property that the county recently, or I guess is in the process of closing the purchase. And that has been, a portion of that is designated to be the ability to pump the water, store and pump water that Tampa Bay Water is delivering.
And so the protection that would be afforded to the ELAPP parcel south, should there be a malfunction, how is that planned for on this parcel? Are you going to have retention ponds all around it, detention ponds, lakes, what?
Well, the good news is it's clean, treated, fresh drinking water.
Sure.
So if there were any sort of malfunction, and as an engineer we designed against that, of course, but things could happen. But if there is a malfunction, it would be treated fresh water. And we have these located, these are located all across the Tampa area, all across the state, and it's and this one's actually a very low, if there's ever any treatment, which right now there's no plan for treatment. This is just a site to receive water from Tampa Bay and then distribute it into the county's distribution system.
Okay. Thank you. Continue. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Joe?
I'm Joel Jackson. As far as easements are concerned, I see there's two different type of easements. One is the easement of the right of way of the pipeline, and the other is an easement to access where you have the opening with the fenced-in area. And would that one in particular require a road to it, which would be another easement in order to get to it for maintenance? And also long range, what kind of restrictions would be over the easement of the pipeline itself? I understand it's really deep, but will there be requirements? I mean, there are usually a lot of times when pipelines like this have pressure relief valves and so forth all along the route. I know that in Pasco County, that's what the Swiftmud well field is. So I have a lot of questions about this and what impact it would have in the long term.
Mm-hmm. So I'll start out, and Ross, you can jump in. I mean, one of the things we've been very clear about in our conversations with Ross and Forrest is, anything we do is going to be along the outermost edge of the ELAPP property, and your standard practice is to have an access road for maintenance and access of your ELAPP property already, and also to serve as kind of a fire lane to block any spread of fire. Our pipe would stay within that outermost edge, and any the drill area that I mentioned, and any permanent feature of a small air relief valve area would be right in or adjacent to that area. So, and we would locate that in an area where it would be a minimal impact to the area. So, from a long-term maintenance and access, it would be essentially the same access road that the ELAPP programs have as a standard practice anyway, along the outer edge of the property.
Let me ask, and this might not be a question that's immediately answerable, but isn't our intention to connect these sites to further ELAP purchases. Would this cross any potential future ELAP purposes? We're talking 30, 50 years. So, or is that not in that, is that not going to cross any future ELAP sites potentially?
Doesn't look.
Yeah, Ross, I'll let you address that one.
Well, I mean, this specific pipe will not cross any more ELAP sites because there's nothing else along here. I mean, there are possible sites to the east of it, but it's all in the same corridor. So I guess the answer is no, because once it hits 674, it hangs back to the west and goes into Sun City. And there's, of course, nothing along there that we're going to be purchasing.
Megan?
Is this the ELAP line? Is this the first time this particular route for the pipe has been presented?
Presented publicly, I think it is, yes.
You want?
Can we get a copy of these slides?
Would you go ahead with your presentation, please?
I had one question, if I may.
Who?
It's Fred Webb.
Oh, thank you, Fred. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is for Ross or Forrest. I'm assuming staff has had a chance to look at it. Do you have any special concerns or worries about this particular project?
There's always concerns when things are going to impact sites, but like we've done on several other sites, in fact, Bomb Scrub along 672 has a water line along the north edge of the road that is in our fire lane. We're working with them. It's a public project. We're trying to keep it within our currently established fire lanes, which are already disturbed areas on the site, so there won't be any clearing. And the fact that they're willing to look for a contractor that can drill underground for up to 6,000 linear feet at a time to avoid all habitats, I think is a plus, because there's going to be one spot on the county property where the impact will be. Everything else will go underground and avoid all habitats, all wetlands, everything that we want to keep. So they're doing their best to work with us. If again, everybody, if again this gets selected to be the site, and then it will also have to come back to the committee for final approval.
So you think the impacts would be very minimal at worst, maybe, right?
I think compared to 15 or 20 years ago, Fred, we're not even going to know it's there, okay, which is nice.
All right, thanks.
What is the mileage from along the ELAP border?
Oh, Ricardo, can you help me out on that? I think it's roughly 6 miles, 5 miles.
Yeah, the entire run's about 11.5 miles. But I think it's
that's from Triple Creek all the way.
Yeah, that's from all up here to here. But I think along ELAP it was about like 6,000. I think
it's about 6,000.
Yeah,
6,000 feet, right? Okay, so a little over a mile.
So the border on ELAP, where the easement would be on the ELAP property, is 6,000 feet. 5,280 is a mile.
Ricardo, can you go back up, slide it, maybe around slide 19? We can kind of zoom in. Keep going. Right there. So the gold shaded area are the 2 ELAP parcels.
So here's a scale.
Oh, okay.
So if you went from the northern end to the very southern end along the Tico route, it's approximately 6,500 linear foot. If we were to then go from east to west over to what's the name of that road?
West Lake.
It's about another 3,000 linear feet. So we're looking at easement of somewhere in the range of around 9,000 linear foot. Of course, that would be probably 35-foot easement, I would think, or less. What's your feel on that, Chuck? Does it need to be that?
We could probably do it in 25 feet. Which is essentially the width of the fire road that you typically maintain on the edge of your parcel. And in the scenario that Cheryl just offered, there would be 3 points up where you would even see anything on the surface. It'd be at the very north end. It'd be, kind of the south, and then it would be the end point to the west over at West Lake Road. So those 3 points, we would have some surface feature that would be maintained. And again, the access to that would be through the typical ELAPP perimeter roadway.
And I didn't hear an answer to the prior question if we could get a copy of this presentation, because not everybody can see it.
Sure. I think, Cheryl, you forwarded that this morning.
I did send it over, so I'll make sure, Ross, that I get it, that just make sure that you have it and that we can get it
Right.
sent out to everyone who wants it.
I actually have a copy of it, and I'll send it to all the members this afternoon.
Great. We only have one more slide as kind of a summary. If you'd like to if there's other questions, or we can just go to that slide. It just really just kind of summarizes what really the benefits of this ELAPP alternative route is. I think that a big one is that the construction is at a road right away. It significantly reduces impacts to the public. So the residents, the visitors, the folks that utilize the roadway would not be impacted. Construction and dedicated easements, again, it simplifies what future maintenance and water transmission main. It also effectively eliminates the risk of future impacts. And as Ross mentioned, if we use the directional drill method that we were talking about here, the line so far underground, we'd never go out. In a rare scenario would we ever go out and actually try to dig down to the pipe. We would look at other measures such as maybe slip lining, in other words, putting a pipe within that pipe or taking it out of service even, but it would be ineffective to have to go in and try to access that pipe just from a constructability standpoint, obviously with the environmental impact as well. And then finally, it significantly reduces construction costs and schedule. That's the first time we're mentioning this. We know that from a cost and schedule standpoint, that's not a main consideration when we're looking at a resource like the ELAPP program, but it's also, I think, worthy of mentioning that one of the reasons why we're looking at this is it could be a reduction in cost and schedule. We don't have the answer to that now. We're evaluating whether it's even from a constructability and cost, if it's even feasible compared to just staying in the roadway right away. But we did want to take this opportunity to come visit with you all and share what we're looking at. And then we also talked earlier, there is a real opportunity there for a cost sharing partnership to expand and add on to the existing restoration of those ELAPP parcels. And know from talking to Ross and Forrest that don't have enough funding perhaps now to do the full range of restoration that you'd like at that sites. And again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the county, but certainly I think we're willing to come to the table and discuss if there's an opportunity to help expand that restoration effort. And that concludes our presentation. Again,
I have a question, Mike Kelly.
Sure.
Yes. What is the relationship between your schedule and the future ELAPP meeting schedules? Are they compatible?
They are. But we would want to come back in October at your next meeting with a full recommendation and ask for a vote on providing something. And we would, if we could get something in October, it would work in our schedule for design and construction moving forward. But we'll spend the next few months working with Ross and his team to develop that plan and be prepared to present it to you. If again, we feel like we determine this is a feasible option among the other alternatives.
Our policy is that we meet in September. Can you make September?
We can make September.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl, are you nodding or okay?
Jan, can I sort of just I just want to thank you, because we can't vote on anything. There's nothing to vote on. I appreciate their presentation. I love the fact that that our county groups try to work together, try to work things out. We are not here to be responsible for public access. We are not here to be responsible for the cost of anything other than the money that's been provided to us by bond funds to buy lands. So what I need before they bring this back is I need for staff to assure me they feel like this is going to not impact our site and is going to stay true to our mission as ELAPP, and then and stay within the confines of our fire lanes and those types of things, because we want to be good public citizens, and we certainly want to help where help is needed and proper. But it is very important that we understand what our mission is here as ELAPP, and how if people get bothered through construction, that is not our concern. So I appreciate it. It sounds like to me that Ross and Forrest will be able to figure something out that convince us. Maybe it sounds like we'll need a quorum, I guess, but I think there'll be some convincing that has to be done. But I just wanted to summarize as the only thing we're going to be interested in is the impact to ELAPP budget and ELAPP property. And that's what we have to know about. So thank you very much.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to just reassure you that over the next 6 months, the Water Resources Department is going to be working very closely with Forrest and with Ross to provide them with more information as we go forward. But this project is going to be delivered by a progressive design build, which means the advantage to that is that we're going to be able to bring on not only the engineer, but the contractor at the same time. So we'll have a contractor sitting at the table as we discuss all of these routes and which one's going to be the most viable for us. That means I'll be able to bring drawings to you to really give you something to show you something the next time we meet. They may be conceptual, but they'll be a little bit more detailed than just our aerial photos with the line through them, so that you can get some kind of an idea of what those impacts might look like. And we're hoping that you'll see that it's relatively low impact after we finish the restoration. And I do want to thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to be able to come here today and share this with you. It's an exciting project, and we love the fact that you're a part of it.
Megan?
I just had one further question. I think you said this earlier. I just want to verify. This is not your preferred option at this point. This is just an option you're considering.
That's right. It's just an option at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you waiting on us. We got a late start. We're learning how to do all these meetings online and in person and half and upside down and right side up. So thank you very much. We'll see you in September, as the song goes.
Jan,
Yes.
Is there a way, if we're going to continue like this, that the information could be accessible, that we could look at it on our laptop or our... No, because I know at the BPAC meetings, I can follow along on my iPad.
Yeah.
And I can't see.
In the other hybrid meetings, they have multiple monitors on, or they can have computers on the desk that come up.
Or just your own computer.
So I think
So I
just
bring my
for this particular meeting, we're like this, but moving forward, I'll print them out to make sure everyone has a copy, but that's something you probably can discuss after the meeting.
But even if they had these monitors on.
Okay, that's something you probably can discuss after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This is Pam Vernick. I have a question.
Yes, Pam.
Are we concluding the meeting?
No. We've got a lot more to do, and you're up next. So, Ross Dickerson, a new site nominations, boundary modifications, and designation changes, please.
Well, I guess these are all going to be briefings now, because you're not going to be making any decisions on these sites. But we do have Pam Vernick first, who's going to talk about a site that she'd like the committee to consider. And after she's done with her presentation, I have a few extra slides that I'm going to show as well on the same site and talk about it as well. So I'm going to hand it off to Pam first.
Ross,
Wait a minute.
does it make sense for us to do this now when we can't all see it? We're not able to vote on it anyway. We need to have the presentation. You're going to put up slides that we can't all see.
Well, everybody can still take a look at it and see everything that we were going to make decisions on today. Just so everybody can get an idea. And Kurt, I think it's a good exercise for us since this is the first time we're ever doing the nominations this way. It's the new way that we're doing these things. It's supposed to be brought to the ELAPP General Committee in March. And I hate to say it, but there could be the possibility that we may need to call a special meeting because of all of these things that are not going to be decided upon today, where the final answer is supposed to come at the September meeting. So I'll leave it up to the committee however you want to do it, but it would be nice to walk through everything even if a decision's not made.
Oh.
I think
I would
since
like to
we
see it.
have a guest here that has come specifically to speak to this one site, we should go through these. Maybe we can just have
I said include.
and then Ross and his presentation and keep
Yes.
them simple. And then perhaps after the meeting, I don't know whether there's detail that backs these up. I assume there is. And then we can, when we have the special meeting, it won't take us so long to get through it because today.
Well, they're going to have to represent everything for the special meeting.
Well,
I would say
yeah,
if we
I
have a
suppose.
special meeting or another meeting, we need to make sure we're going to have a quorum because a bunch of us
We
came
were
here.
supposed to have a quorum.
Can't
People
tell which
that
one
said
which
they were
you
going to be
press
here didn't.
But people need to understand that if they don't
Yeah.
come and they say
Megan.
they're going to.
It went away.
It's not that I don't want to have a guest present. I just don't want to waste her time if we're going to have to start over again.
Yeah, wait.
If we give the presentation this afternoon, and I think you should distribute all these materials later probably, then we can look at them later, and then we'll come very prepared to the special meeting and be able to vote very quickly.
Well,
But that's only
because
that's
we
only
have
part
at
of it.
least 2 quorum members that aren't here, it's going to be a total repeat anyway.
If we can't have people guaranteed.
What I would like to give Pam the opportunity to speak, that she has come down and spent the day with us. So
Sure.
let's at least do the Violet Curry, and then we have a board member who is very familiar with the area, and he might have some responses to her comments of his own. So let's do the Violet Curry Cypress Creek connection. Okay. Okay, Ross, Pam, are you ready?
Yes, I am, but do you
Okay,
see?
go for it.
Okay, do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I will try and make it short. We are located where 275 was constructed. I hope you can see the arrow. This is Livingston, which is 9 miles long. And we think, we can't figure it out, but we think this area that I'm asking for consideration was actually the dugout for 275 over Livingston. So I'm going to go through this quickly because I know everybody's having, you know, fun here. These are the 3 folios. Livingston Avenue is right here. And the most important thing is this is a watershed, or it's basically undeveloped, and it never has been developed, any of it. And this is Violet Curry Preserve, which has been here a while. It's 60 acres. So everything in here has been basically a nursery for a lot of things in Violet Curry Preserve. As an aerial view from the appraiser's office, the biggest piece, Livingston Avenue right here, 275. The biggest piece is the next will show a swift mud designation of what actually it is. So I'll just go there. So the way we obtained this swift mud was because Florida Department of Transportation stuck a sign in the corner of our yard and said, I thought at first they meant that we were for sale, but no, all of this was for sale in this little strip right here. This is about, I don't know, 5 years ago. So we put in an offer to buy 1 acre because when I went down to Hillsborough County Planning, they said, of course we can put in a road 20 feet from your house. So we're like, great. So we did our diligence and did the best that we could, and Swift Mud was very kind and gave us a survey. So this is, of the biggest pieces, it shows, you know, how they designate everything.
Excuse me, but who is we?
I'm married, Alan Vernick and I.
Okay, so you're not the property owners, you're the nominators, and who owns the property?
The property at the moment is owned by a gentleman who was trying to develop a piece over here, and he bought all of it from Florida Department of Transportation.
So you live adjacent to it?
We live right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes.
Okay. And when we moved in 2007, I knew we would have this challenge eventually. So it took 14 years. Once Florida Department of Transportation stuck their little sign on the corner here, we basically got a hold of someone and said, we want to make an offer. And eventually they thought they had sold it to someone else until we reminded them that they have to make it a public sale. And they didn't. And we showed them that they didn't. So we went back to the drawing table. They basically wanted $100,000 for this 1 acre. And we were like, no, and showed them the Swift Mud and made an offer, and they accepted it. So the rest of it, however, the person who owns it is trying, I'll just skip over this. I have 4 minutes left. He was trying to develop this 3 acres right here. Now, this is after we got our 1 acre. He bought that 3 acres, this 26 acres, and this, because FDOT sells land to anybody. It feels like. So the whole community was upset, and basically we went to BOCC, and 2 years later, he now has it for sale. And we don't have evidence, but we are pretty sure the county said, no way are they going to come up here with utilities, water mainly. And the lady who at the time, 2 years ago, would have approved any kind of septic system quietly said no way. So, you know, we don't know. We can only guess. We can only, you know, put in a gamble that that's the reason he has it for sale now. So the 3 acres is virgin. I have a copy of the well, and it's never been used, the well permit, and it's never been used. That's how they got the address for that 3 acres. These 2 parcels have never had addresses. They've never had, they're virgin. So they still have the legal description from 1948. If you go back through Hillsborough County appraisal, and the number that's assigned to it, you can see the original land description. So one of 6 criteria, just briefly, that it provides land with native everything, which it pretty much does, because we've been living next to it for 14 years. So I tried to document the birds, some of which are endangered, some of which are just challenged if there's another for that. The ibis, it definitely are here. The otters, we have a den next to us. They're not endangered as far as I can tell, but the den is there between our property and the property, the acre we bought. Again, this land, the 3 acres, is just, nothing's there, never has been there. And it's the very, what do you call it? Scrub everything. It's very dry. One thing we do have between Violet Curry Preserve, the 60 acres, and what's next of us, the 33 acres, are turtles. The tortoises tend to stay at Violet Curry Preserve, and this little guy is definitely a traveler, at least across our 2 acres, into the 33 acres. So the proposed folios are very wet. So we've only been out there once or twice, and there are lots of alligators because we hear them, among everything else. So we're not too inclined to walk out there. To show the connectivity between Violet Curry Preserve, this is 60 acres, and the 33 and 3 acres. It was very hard to get a picture without using a drone. I don't have a drone. So what I did was I went approximately right here and took a picture looking down the road. This is Curry Road, looking down this road, and that's where the alligators cross most of the time. And then the last slide that I have is showing that this is Violet Curry Preserve, and I don't know if you all were part of this. I think you might have been, but this would be connecting the two. So one is basically, what's next to us is basically a nursery, and it would be connected to Violet Curry. And that's all I have.
Pam, thank you. I'm going to ask Joe Guidry to comment on what he knows about this area.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a great idea since I live close there. I did, if that's where I think it is, Curry Road does separate that acreage from Violet Curry.
Yes, but they also, that culvert right there, that's the reason I took a picture of it. They go through there.
Yeah. No, it would still be a close thing. It would be great. It's a beautiful site. I jog around it, and it'd be nice to preserve it, not have high density or apartments in there.
The only question I have about the parcels that you're nominating, Pam, years ago, we had a lot of problems out in Lutz with septic tank companies creating their own sludge fields wherever it suited them, or if they had friends that owned property. Do you know whether or not, if the property was always wet, it probably couldn't have been a sludge field, but do you know whether it's always been wet?
As far as the neighbors, the older ones, because there are a lot of committee members that show up at BOCC, it's always been wet. At one time it did flood, but that was after it rained a lot for a long time. And then during the drought, which is when some of these pictures were taken actually, it was very dry. And to answer the other question I think is being asked is Hillsborough County came out and put fish in the water. As far as we can tell, there's still a lot of fish out there. Nobody's draining into it, I think is the question being asked. Nothing is being drained into it. All the septics that are around this area, or according to code. So we're pretty, you know, they make sure it stays away from that. I wouldn't say the water is crystal clear, but there's a lot of animals out there.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody here in our room?
I have a comment.
Joel?
Isn't this more appropriate to go through the procedure for nominating a site to begin with and having our site assessment committee look at it?
We had some changes in procedures because of the lack of nominations. So let's have Forrest or Ross answer your question. Ross or Forrest, did you hear his question?
Yes, this is the new process, Joel. Any new site has to come before the ELAPP General Committee in March of the year that it's being nominated. And then the ELAPP General Committee makes the decision on whether or not it goes through the process.
Thank you. I must have missed that meeting.
It was in when we were trying to change all of the policies to change the rankings and everything,
Right.
and the boundaries and all.
Can
What I would like to ask staff, please, we can't do anything with any of these sites today because we do not have a quorum. So I would like it, if you have backup material for each of these 4 sites, can it be emailed or sent to all of the board members? That means all of the charter members and all of the members of the general committee, so that we can have the information, so that when we come back, be it a special meeting or a regular meeting, looks to me like it has to be a special meeting, that we can have the information in front of us so that we're not just trying to do things blind.
Ross, if you'll get it to me, I'll put it up on the website.
Yeah, I mean, I have this presentation, and then I have all of the backup maps that I was going to show. So we can send anything to you, Jan, anything you want.
Hey, Ross, let me ask you a question. Is this really a new site, or is this just really a boundary modification?
Well, that's what I was going to talk about. But
Okay.
I don't know if we want to look at all the maps that I had, or if we just want to wait.
You could tell us what your opinion is at this point. No. I think we were talking about this. The others are boundary modifications, are they not?
Well, yes, they are. But here, let me just show something to
Because
help.
it looks like we have 2 different things. We have something that's initiated by staff, the next 3 ones, which are modifications, and then what we just heard now was initiated by a citizen.
Correct. So I just wanted to, yes, and this one could be a new site if you wanted it to be, but I also wanted to show you the full view of the area. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
So this is the area that's being nominated. You can see Violet Curry's down here. Violet Curry's is 160 acres. And then we have Cypress Creek over here. And then we have other ELAPP approved sites over here. While the ELAPP program has never really approved what is a borrow pit, and when you pull up the LiDAR, you can clearly see that this is a borrow pit. This site is highly disturbed. It probably was dug out for the interstate. It was not always wet, but it definitely stays wet now. This site alone probably would not have been approved, because that's what history has proven in ELAPP. But when you take into account other open areas in the area and the fact that we do have this approved site up here, this site probably could be added as a boundary modification to Cypress Creek to reach over to Violet Curry. We talked about maybe not including the 3 acres of uplands because that'll be an absolute nightmare to manage. It provides a false corridor that will never go to another ELAPP site across Livingston area. So it could actually provide a death trap to animals that go that way. But if we connected the main corridor up through here, we might even be able to get wildlife crossings on Livingston when it's improved. And then when you look at the big picture of the area, it really is it is the last connection to ever try to connect Violet Curry to anything. So we were gonna recommend it be added to the program as a boundary modification, just like the other sites I was gonna present today.
Okay, well, since we're not going to move forward with any of these with a vote, please find a way to make sure all of us have the information so that it can be viewed, and then maybe simplify our next meeting, whether it's whenever. So we're going to thank you very much. And Pam Vernick, thank you for your nomination and for spending the afternoon with us here. We hope that when we do this again, that you'll have the opportunity to be able to participate with us again.
I'll be here.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the Theodore Roosevelt Hillsborough Forever Award, and the ELAPP General Committee is supposed to approve by a vote then who we have selected. I'm not mentioning the name because we don't want it to be public until we take a position, and then it's going to go to the Board of County Commissioners, and it has to be there by April 7th. So, Miss Fernandez, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Susan, what can we do with this Theodore Roosevelt? Can we do a consensus of people here saying that the subcommittee unanimously selected this nominee, or?
So when do you need to have it to the board?
April 7th. That's next week, next Monday, Tuesday.
How is that date established? Refresh my memory on that, please.
Megan.
Hey, Susan. So we have to put this on the agenda to approve because the award is scheduled to be presented at the second meeting in April. So it has to be confirmed by the board that this is the winner on the meeting prior to, at least by the meeting prior to the presentation.
Or the board will have to move the whole thing up.
Yeah.
If we don't.
We'll have to change the presentation schedule. Communications will have to change the awards presentation.
That's a very awkward position to be in then. My thought was, why don't we take this up at the special meeting, but that's obviously not going to occur between now and the board's first meeting in April.
Right.
I suppose the best we can do is just announce it and see if there are any people in objection, and we'll figure out a way to frame that up on the agenda.
Okay, can I have any of our board members that are on the screen? They should be included if it's a consensus motion or do not object. Wouldn't that be right?
It would be best if everyone could be included. There is a feature too that people can raise their hands. I know we haven't been using that today. But that's an icon at the toolbar on the top of the screen. That might be a way for people that are attending virtually to, that does sort of resemble a vote then. So
well, suppose we have, I'm thinking of how I want to do this.
Did the subcommittee approve it?
Yes.
And
the subcommittee approved it.
Okay. And you had a
on Zoom.
Pardon me?
But we were on Zoom.
All of you? Oh, that's right. Okay.
Since the subcommittee does not make an official decision, did not have to have a hybrid meeting to have a quorum.
That's right.
So, Susan Fernandez, your recommendation is that we hold it off and explain to the board the issue of a lack of a quorum, and we try to have a special meeting within the month of April, and they'll have to move their time frame up a month also?
But there's no point in having a separate meeting if we don't have a quorum.
I understand. And we can't. I'm losing some. Susan, are you speaking to us?
No, I'm not. Actually, somehow I got kicked off, but I just rejoined the meeting. So can you hear me still?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So our best shot to do this correctly would be to have a special meeting sometime during the month of April. And hopefully we'll get a quorum, and I would hope that people that say they're coming would actually come to the meetings. And then the Board of County Commissioners will have to schedule it a month later also. If we can't do it by a consensus or do not object, and I understand it all requires a quorum. So is your suggestion that we just go to a special meeting and perhaps in the month of April?
You know, Megan, how much of a problem does that pose as far as pushing the award back to the first meeting in May, for example?
Well, I think the issue it presents is that there's about 3 or 4 other major awards that the commission does. And this is one of them. I think that if we move Theodore Roosevelt, it's probably going to have to go to the end of the queue. So it may end up being June before it's actually presented. And the original, Ross, I don't know if you have the bylaws of the thing in front of you. I'm sorry, I don't have it. Does it state in there that there has to be a vote, or does it just have to be a recommendation? I cannot remember.
In the past, we have voted it.
I know in the past we have voted, but if it's not required that we vote. Yeah.
Because the commission votes on it.
Yeah, the BOCC confirms it by a vote.
The question is, Susan, can you frame it in such a way, a motion for us, that we could do it today, or a consensus and hand showing of those in attendance by Zoom and in the room?
Maybe just style it as if there are no objections to the recommendation, which I believe the subcommittee did in fact take a vote, did they not?
Yes.
Okay, so if there are no objections to the recommendation of the subcommittee, then it's like a tacit affirmation of that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, that's what we're going to do. But first of all, we're going to tell you who won the award. And Sally Thompson has some comments to make, so I'm going to let her make her comments and tell you that the nominee to be presented to you today is Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, and we didn't discuss it when we were talking about the nomination, is the fact that the property that Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful is one of our original ELAPP sites. And what they've done to that original ELAPP site is they've done a lot of restoration on it. There was a bungalow that was falling apart. It's the Reed property. Dr. Reed wanted to tear it down and build a old folks home or some sort of something. Anyway, that particular bungalow has now been restored. It's being used as an education center. So I think one of the things that Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful is doing now is making the most and doing wonderful things with one of our original ELAPP properties. So I think that makes it even more, makes them even more of deserving of the award. I can go on more, but I don't think you need more, do you? They're doing shoreline restoration, all kinds of stuff.
Is there anyone from the staff who wants to talk about this site? Listen to me, this nominee? Because I think a lot of the people here in the room don't have any information on it. But the committee had 2 people, and this organization as the final 3 when we brought it down to 3 to debate. And this was the organization. It's the first time we've considered giving an award to an organization as opposed to an individual. And it just was a consensus and then a unanimous vote that we make it the Tampa Bay, Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful. So what I would like is to have to say without objection.
I asked the question at the initial and we discussed the criteria for the award, and although we've done it to people in the past, the bylaws or whatever the rules are indicated it can be a person or an organization. So that was something that needed to be clarified, and it was.
Yeah.
Is that what you?
Without further discussion, would somebody like to suggest that we accept this recommendation?
No objection.
No objection.
I'll second the non-objection.
In the room.
Very worthy. Yeah.
Okay.
And then what I had requested was when when it's written up, that they do mention, that is mentioned this part, that it is an ELAPP site, one of our original ELAPP sites in the city, and the stuff that's been done. And I'll be happy to talk to you if you need.
Yes, I'll get.
Okay.
So the members that I see on the screen, Michael, John, Doug, Glenna, and Fred, would you raise your hand if you're in favor of this consensus recommendation? So 3 of you are in favor. Okay. So does the chief count as one vote or two? Huh? John and Glenn, she voted, but Doug, you did not vote, is that correct?
I think I'm a voting member now, if I'm not mistaken.
You are a voting member.
So the response would be no objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you. Okay. All right, the recommendation then will be our staff and Sally will work on a write-up to send it to the Board of County Commissioners so they have information to give to the press on the award, and it can proceed as hopefully planned. I will say that if you all remember, those of you who have come down to these awards, that usually the county commission has several other that they do them all in one day. So it's nice that we can do our part and be there on that one day.
Jan, one more thing. I want to make sure that everybody understands that you shouldn't be telling people about this. It's going to be, who makes the announcements?
Until the county commission makes it public.
Okay.
Okay, we have recommendations for changes to the site ranking policy. If these have to be voted on, we should skip that, Ross.
We should skip it.
Thank you. Trail naming Kent would be the same. We'd have to vote on that.
Correct.
Did you pick a trail?
We did.
Perhaps that information can come out to us, or do you have it to tell us now?
I do. How about I show you?
Okay, good.
Can you all see this screen?
Yep.
So the trail that we're looking at is the one that is highlighted in green in the center portion of the map. And it connects hikers from the old pine plantation area of the preserve to the only spot on the preserve that's never been impacted habitat-wise by humans, section 26. We're not sure exactly why it escaped disturbance, but it's the most natural area on the property, so we thought it would be perfect for Kent. But we're still working with Sierra Club on everything. We got some information today, but this will most likely be the recommendation at the meeting.
Okay, wonderful, good idea. Thank you. The financial and acquisition update, Kurt.
So Jan, Kurt has taken a sick day today, which he rarely does. So I'll be substituting for Mr. Grimley. And we have a quick update on 5 different ELAPP acquisitions. 1 has been acquired. The other 4 we are close to acquiring sometime in the next 1 to 3 months. So I'll try to share my screen here.
Do I need to move that cursor for him to?
No, that's all.
He can do it?
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes. Nice colors.
Okay, great. So this first parcel is called the Garrett parcel. And when I move this up and down, are you seeing that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the Garrett parcel, it's about 6 acres in size, and it's adjacent to the Little Manatee River, right near the intersection of Saffold Road and Highway 301. It's the area that's outlined here in red. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yeah, we can see the red.
Perfect. So again, 6 acres. We acquired this for $135,000. It was late last year, which was about 15% below average appraised value. So we got a very good deal on it. Of the 6 acres, about 4 acres is uplands, 2 acres is wetlands. And if you're familiar with the canoe outpost along the Little Manatee River, it's the parcel that's adjacent to the canoe outpost. So we built a nice complex of lands in here. The area that you don't see highlighted in either red or green to the north and to the west, that's all Little Manatee River State Park. So really this is part of a much larger complex of lands that heads off to the west. So that's the one site that we've actually acquired. And I'll try to share my screen again. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. This parcel is called the Hagen parcel. It's about 20 acres in size. And primarily this is pine flatwoods habitat combined with a sort of a annular perennial stream system that's located on the western portion of the site. Right in the center, we have a residence and a barn. That's Mrs. Hagen's residence. Mrs. Hagen is a woman in her early 80s. And so what we're going to do on this acquisition is provide her with an up to 20-year lease on that middle 2 acres or so, which is around her house and the barn. And that's what we had to do to get the deal to work. And upon her passing, the 2 acres will revert to Hillsborough County. And then at that point, we will own the entire 20 acres. But in the interim, the 18 acres that surrounds the compound will be managed by county staff, primarily with prescribed fire. A little bit of exotic plant control here and there. It's really not too bad on the site though. And the one good thing about this site is it fills in this sort of last remaining gap. You can see Boyette Road down here. Everything to the south of Boyette Road on this open pasture either will be or is currently being developed. So the great thing about this acquisition, as well as Jeffcoat, which you might remember, which is adjacent to and off to the west, is we were able to prevent development from leapfrogging Boyette Road to the north and basically creating an inroad into this fishhawk preserve. So it's nice to be able to get these inholdings in place and be able to continue our management of the site without any major obstacles that would be associated with the development. Any questions on this parcel?
So you're doing that as like a life estate where she gets the 20 years? Is this, are we paying or is she donating? What?
So the way it works is the 20 years will be broken down into 4 5-year increments. So this is more like a lease than it is a life estate. Okay. In a moment, I will show you an example of a life estate that we're working on with a gentleman named Mr. Holmberg, I'm sorry. But this is a traditional lease, and she will, essentially be able to live there rent-free until she passes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Anyone? Anyone on Zoom? Anybody up there? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is the Holmberg property, and we're very excited about this acquisition. We have reached a verbal agreement with Mr. Holmberg. Mr. Holmberg is a gentleman in his early 80s. He's owned the property for about 30 years and has kept some of it native, some in pasture, and obviously you can see in the very center has an active nursery operation. This has been on the ELAPP wish list for about 25 years, maybe a little bit longer. And this is sort of the missing link in between Bomboyette, which is immediately to the south, and the district's reservoir property, which is immediately to the north. So it's kind of that missing link between the two. So for this particular acquisition, we're looking at acquiring a total of 559.6 acres. A portion of it will be available immediately for restoration. That's the area that you see off to your west, which is along what we call Pringle Branch. The next area will be a phase down area, in which you'll have a 2-year lease. That's the crosshatch area off to the north and to the extreme east of the site. So within 2 years, we'll have control of that area as well to restore. And then the third area is 117.5 acres. That's outlined here, and it's either orange or yellow. My apologies, I'm slightly colorblind, but it's the third area that's called Core Nursery Area. And so that will be under a life estate and will be under control of Mr. Holmberg until he passes. At some point in the future, the county will get full control of that, and it will be restored just like the rest of the site. The only structure on that portion that we would probably keep is a nice office building that he has out there. It's a nice 2-story house that could serve as a satellite office or maybe a site security resident down the road. But outside of that, the remainder of the nursery facilities will be removed and that portion of the site restored, at a later date. And when I say at a later date, I mean, it could be very soon, or it could be, later on, depending upon Mr. Holmberg's lifespan. So that's what we're working on now. We expect to close sometime in July, August. We still have to work out the details of the life estate, but I'd say at this point we're well on our way to getting a final contract completed and then getting that to the board. And the cost on this is going to be right at about $7.55 million, and that is below average appraised value.
Forest, is the land to the west that isn't crosshatched, is that already, it's pristine, it doesn't need to be restored?
So,
I assume this property is the rectangle that's, it's in red or orange.
that's correct. Yeah, so the entire property is outlined in red. The portion that's adjacent to the creek is, I won't say it's natural, it's semi-natural. It will require some ground cover restoration, probably by seeding with a mix of wiregrass and other species that are typically found within pine flatwoods. The area that's hatched that we call the phase down area under the 2-year lease that kind of stretches off on the northern portion of the property and then off to the east, that will be restored in a similar fashion, primarily ground cover, wiregrass, other grasses and wildflowers. And then, from that point on, basically prescribed burn. We might have some supplemental plantings in there with shrubs and trees, but we want to maintain the open feature as much as possible on this property because there are fox squirrels out there. So we want to try to maintain that habitat for them, which again is very open, grassy, occasional pine tree, and that's primarily it. So once we get that finished over the next 5-7 years, then, you know, at some point down the road, we will focus on restoring the 117 acres, which will be under the life estate for the near future.
I think I'm not sure if I asked the question right. Part of the land isn't cross-hatched. Is that just going to be left as is?
No, I think you said we're going to restore in phases. The part was not cross-hatched, needs some seeding. And
right.
The yellow hatching we pick up in 2 years, and then the green hatching there is his life estate.
Okay, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Forrest, please, I hope Kurt's feeling better, pass on our feelings, but I love the fact that, one, we're getting these properties under appraised value, and we're using these methods, very inventive methods. I mean, in the course of us owning this forever, allowing these people to live there for 15 or 20 years is nothing. I think it's wonderful. I think this is these all three are great, but that's a great acquisition right there.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. It's a huge acquisition. I never thought we'd get it. Honestly, I remember talking to Rob Heath about this many, many years ago, 20 plus years ago, and you know, pointing out to him when I was much younger, saying, "Hey, Rob, you know what's this piece right here?" He goes, "Ah, you know what? We're never going to get that. Don't worry about it." And Mr. Holmberg, as he's gotten older, now in his early 80s, I think he's wanting to leave something behind, and so it's just interesting how things change over time. Okay, any more questions?
Nope. Is there another one?
Yep, there should be one final one.
I have a question, if I may, from
Sure.
Zoom. Karen Mahalski. Since we're starting to get more of these properties going into lease, and like you said, the gentleman wants to leave something behind, and possibly the previous lady, are we going to provide them a plaque or provide some designation on the property, maybe to inspire visitors to bequeath land?
So that's a great question, and in each one of these cases, and there's a property coming up which we're actually going to do just that, but we always ask the owner if they want some type of a memorial plaque, something to show that they were willing to not only sell the property to the ELAPP program, but in some cases sell it at a very large discount. We always ask that question. Some folks are receptive to it. They would like to see their name or perhaps their family's name out there on a plaque. And again, I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. And in some cases, they don't really want that for whatever reason. So it's very specific to each owner. But yes, we do always ask the question.
And sometimes we even name parcels for those, like the Violet Curry.
Very true. All right, so I'll share the next one. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. So this particular site is called the Gooch and Mosley parcel. And the parcel itself is about 138 acres. It's what you see outlined here in red, kind of a rectangular red piece. And then also includes this little tiny sliver of blue up here. Again, the entire parcel is 138 acres. We are acquiring it for a significant discount, about 15% below average appraised value. The nice thing about this site is it connects up with not only what we refer to as the Gooch parcel of the Alafia River North Prong, portion here, which is approximately 800 acres. But it also connects up with this area that's kind of outlined in yellow and dotted lines, and that is 235 acres that's owned by Mosaic, but it's under a permanent conservation easement. So it will never be developed. And Ross and I drove the edges of that a few weeks ago, and it's very nicely restored. Has some exotic plant control issues, but nothing that couldn't be addressed. So all in all, combined with the 800 acres that we call the Gooch parcel, which again was acquired many years ago, plus the 138 for this Mosley acquisition, plus the 235, you're looking at almost 1,200 acres of preserved land along the North Prong. In this case, as I mentioned, the gentleman, Mr. Mosley, requested that there be a sign placed at the upcoming trailhead, which we're going to be developing over the next year or so. Some signage and maybe a plaque at the trailhead acknowledging the Gooch family and their contribution not only to the ELAPP program by selling this property at a discount, but also their contribution to citrus and agricultural production in the region. So Ross and I will be working with the landowner on that language, and within the next year or so, we will be incorporating that into the development of our trailhead at the site. Any questions?
No. Any more?
One more, I think.
Is there another one?
There's one final one, and I'm going to hopefully save the best for last, at least financially speaking.
Tell me it's Triple Creek.
I wish.
Nothing. I'm never going to get.
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yes, that's really pretty.
Yeah. This is a site we've been trying to acquire for over a decade. To get your bearings, the Little Manatee River is immediately to the south, and to the north is the Bahia Beach Coastal Preserve. And if you were to follow that up to the north, that actually connects up the Wolf Branch even further north than that. So all told, this 85-acre parcel, more or less, which you see highlighted in red, this is connected to about 1,300 acres along the bay.
We almost have our forum.
And the great thing about this site is we have funding through the state of Florida to pay for about 90% of the purchase price. So we received a restore grant from the state. Total grant amount is $5 million. About $3,275,000 is going to go to acquisition, and the other roughly $1.8 million will go toward initially habitat restoration, and we're going to try to amend our grant agreement to include some type of public access feature in here as well that would be funded by that 1.8 million. So all in all, with the acquisition and the restoration costs for this project, the county is only going to be spending about $325,000 ELAPP funds out of a total $5 million grant. So,
what's the state program you're talking about?
This is called the Restore program, and this is one of 3 different grant programs that emerged from the BP oil spill back in 2010.
Okay.
So this is something that we applied for a few years back, and we listed 5 potential sites throughout what we call the Cockroach Bay Aquatic Preserve and Watershed. And the first site that we had on our list was the Reeder property, which is about 400 acres that's down by what we call the Tico Rock Ponds project.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Miss Reeder was not willing to sell, and is still not willing to sell to the county. So I'm really glad that when we submitted this, we submitted a lot of backup properties for acquisition. And I'll be honest, even up till just a few weeks ago, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to reach agreement on this property. But Kurt, in his using his experience and his negotiation skills, was able to get it for us. Now, I will say on this property, we are going to be paying for the acquisition a little bit more than average appraised value. That's how we had to get the deal to work. So the average appraised value on this came out at $3,275,000. The agreed upon purchase price is at $3.6 million. You know, sometimes that's just what it takes to get the deal done. But again, we feel great about it because even though we're going to have to shoulder that $325,000 difference between the average appraised value and the agreed upon purchase price, the remainder of it will be funded by the state. And of course, all of the restoration costs and potentially public access will be funded by the state as well. So it's like getting a $5 million gift on a $325,000 investment.
That's great.
What are the areas that have the yellow?
Those are
outline?
in holdings. I was curious about that, yeah.
Yeah, so those were in the acquisition as well. The in holdings are owned by the Little Harbor CDD. So this was actually a transaction where Kurt had to get agreement from two different parties, not only the landowner, but also the CDD. And he did a tremendous job over about a 12 to 18 month period negotiating this deal.
And we have a partner with it, so that's nice for us.
Absolutely. And then the great thing about this is the reimbursement comes quickly. It's not one of those things you have to wait 5 years to get. It's we should have, you know, the money within 12 months, if not sooner.
Does this take up all of our BP money allocated? Or do we still have more money for other sites?
This is the only project that we have right now that's within the ELAPP program that could be funded by Restore.
And just to clarify, this is not the BP money that came to Hillsborough County, if that's the question.
No, I assume that was BP money that went to the state of Florida and then came down from there. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 different pots of money, you know, that have been issued since the BP oil spill. Some came directly to the county, some went to the state. So as Ross mentioned, this is the state portion that we applied for. It's hard to believe, like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it's finally coming to fruition.
What are the small parcels to the right of what we're looking at? Would that be to the south?
Where you see
they're at an angle. They're all along the border. Are they trailers, mobile homes?
Yeah, those are mobile homes. And you have a couple of parcels a little bit further to the east that have like one home on them, kind of near the river. And you can see docks that kind of jut out.
Or is that parcel going to have any burning on it, or is it too wet? What? I just wonder how it's going to be affected by those people, or what? How are you going to deal with it?
Yeah, so the parcel itself is going to require some significant Brazilian pepper and Australian pine removal, in particular in the center of the property where it was more disturbed. Once we get that under control and get it maintained, historically this was kind of a pine flatwoods oak hammock system that went all the way down to the river. And you know, Ross and I have the soils maps and the old habitat maps as well. So we're going to follow what was historically here. The good thing about the site is the soils have not been severely disturbed. It was farmed in the center for a while, but not to the point to where, you know, there's any kind of pollution concerns or any major ditching or hydrologic alterations. So we're fairly confident we can go in there, remove the exotics, maintain them, and then where possible, go in there and put in our grasses, shrubs, and trees.
Forrest, can you hear me?
Hey, Fran, how you doing?
Hey, Forrest, how are you?
Doing
Hey,
well.
listen, I stepped back for a minute before you started this part of the presentation. Is that the Bahia Beach restoration site just to the north?
That's correct.
That's correct. And so, that southern parcel, I'm really glad you guys are finally going to have an opportunity to buy that. And there is some great restoration potential on that site in spite of all the non-native vegetation, but there's a lot of opportunities. And that might even be a site that I can't speak for swim, but I know back in the day I was looking at that as a potential partnership between the county and the swim program.
Yeah, absolutely, Brant. And we will reach out to SWIM to see if there's any interest in maybe creating some isolated wetlands on the site. That would always be a nice component to your pine flatwood system. And I think historically there were one or two small wetland pockets there on the site. So maybe those could even be, reinvigorated or restored depending upon what their condition is.
And that Bahia Beach has an incredible number of birds using that preserve.
I would like to interrupt the meeting and ask Brant a question. Is this the second ELAPP meeting you've attended?
Well, I tried to attend one earlier, but I couldn't make the connection. So I guess this is technically the second official one since I couldn't get in on a previous meeting. Probably my fault more than anybody else's.
Okay, because I know we'd be delighted to have you as a member of the ELAPP General Committee. I just am trying to keep track of who our prospective members are. Thank you. Go ahead, Forrest and Brant.
Hey, Forrest.
Hey.
Hey, this is Rocky Milburn. How you doing?
Rocky, how you doing?
Okay, as you know, I spend a lot of time at Bahia Beach and Wolf Ranch Creek, but you know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what's there now at this plant, and I am so happy you got this because I was there Saturday with Gary Gibbons, and we were at Bahia Beach, and it's just a tremendous spot. So my question is, how are you going to restore that place? You're going to kind of mirror Bahia Beach maybe, and is there going to be water access? I hope not.
Those are great questions. So, and Ross, hey, feel free to jump in here if you hear me going off topic or saying something that's not accurate. But I think the way that we would go after this restoration was we would attack the exotics first, probably through some kind of mechanical removal. I've walked the entire site, and while it's not certainly wall-to-wall exotics, there's a significant invasion, especially in certain areas. So there are going to be areas where we have to do mechanical removal, follow-up treatment religiously every 3 to 4 months with chemicals, and probably just do that for a year, or maybe even 2, to make sure that we get all of that under control. And then at that point, there's a couple different ways we could go. We could do, strictly upland restoration through direct planting. We could go the route, as Brant mentioned, of working with the swim program, trying to find some wetland restoration or even potentially some creation opportunities on the property, and kind of mix that in with our overall upland restoration. So there's a couple of ways we could go here. But I think getting rid of the exotics and controlling them for at least a year first is going to have to be number one on the list. And, we'll do that and then go from there.
Just a grade, it puts a corridor almost always at Rock Ponds from Wolf Ranch Creek. Tremendous.
Thanks, Rocky. We're really excited about it. And that's one of the reasons why we put that site on the list. That was our second ranked site next to the Reeder property. And really glad we got it because it creates that whole corridor all the way down from Wolf Branch to the Manatee County line.
So does that complete our financial acquisition update?
Well, there was, I think the other half of his question was, did you know if it was going to connect to the water? Was that going to have access?
So, yeah, the public access to the water, we're still looking at options there, but whatever we do is going to be very passive in nature. It's not going to be anything, you know, like a regional park or something like that. Maybe a canoe launch, some small parking area, enough for maybe 5-10 vehicles, very similar to what we have there at Bahia Beach to the north, but not something that would be intrusive, where you have multiple amenities throughout the preserve. It basically would be one entry exit point, probably that area immediately to the west or on the western boundary of the property, that little road that's already there. And I have just kind of a rustic canoe kayak launch, enough parking for 5 to 10 vehicles, an interpretive kiosk, and that's about it as far as I can imagine.
Yeah, for all of those who remember that site, when there was a trailer park there, we're going to utilize the road that goes back to where the trailers were and the old boat ramp that was there. Although it will not be a boat ramp, we're thinking just a ADA accessible canoe launch like the ones you'd find at Upper Tampa Bay Park, Camp Bayou, just something super simple that requires human power to get a boat out. You can't back a boat in there.
Good.
All right, and Jan, that's it for me.
So we're going to move ahead with Ross now for the land management update, please.
You can copy that.
Ross, I think you're muted.
I'm talking to myself, I'm sorry. I'm going to make this really quick because it's 6:30 and I don't need to read to everybody. I can have this sent out by Keisha. So over the last 6 months, we've been able to burn 6,500 acres, which is huge to our program. Those of you who've been with us for the longest time, there's been years where we burned 1,000 acres. There's been years when we burned 5,000 acres. 6,500 acres in 6 months is huge to us. And that's because of the new burn crew that we have, all the new resources that we have, and my staff just loves fire. So they've been out there burning as much as possible. We wrapped up 2 giant grant projects from the Tampa Bay Estuary Program out at the Lower Green Swamp, where we've installed ditch blocks and other structures to rehydrate the wetlands out there. So far at Lower Green Swamp, we've rehydrated over 200 acres of wetlands on the property, and the place is looking fantastic. It's getting a little hot now, but if you're looking for a hike, I would recommend going out there and seeing everything. And then we have almost 5,000 acres worth of restoration that's either in the planning stages or currently started out on the properties. Again, because of the bond funds that we have now that actually allow us to do these projects, our staff is really running through as much as they possibly can. These projects, they'll be on this list for a long time because most of our projects are multi-year projects, but I just want to keep updating this so you all can see everything that's going on the nature preserves. Public access, we now have 11 ADA parking pads out on the nature preserves, and Chris is still working on ways to make them more inclusive for people. And I'm sure Chris is going to mention this, but Camp Bayou is now open to the public 7 days a week. Our staff stepped up and is out there staffing the property Monday through Wednesday. And because we're now there Monday through Wednesday, Ruskin Community Development Foundation, or actually I guess it's Bold now, sorry, Bayou Outdoor Learning and Discovery, increased their hours and added Sunday. So now there's 7-day access to the canoe launch at Camp Bayou. There's 7-day access to the facilities out there. And so far it's getting a great response. And then also over the last 6 months, we've installed about 1.5 miles of fencing around the preserves for extra security, but these fences also include like access areas and stuff like that. So it's not just always security. So that is my update, and I'll make sure I'll send this out so you guys can read every detail.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Great report and well done quickly. Curtis Brown has a question to ask you about land management.
I wanted to bring an issue to the committee because I've approached staff on this unsuccessfully, and I think it's proper stewardship of our properties. On about 50% of the preserves, we don't have a trash can at the entrance to the preserve, but we expect that the public is going to pick up their dog waste or their trash, take it out to their car, and take it home to dispose of it. And that's very unrealistic. And if you notice, most of the preserves that have, not all, but most, that have trash cans, you see a lot less trash in there affecting the wildlife and the animals. And in some of them, there's just huge amounts of trash. We have volunteers that go in and pick up the trash, and then they have to take it home to get rid of it. We have sites where we have a site manager on the property, and we still don't have a trash can at the end of at the entrance to the property. I think it should just be an automatic. There's ways to accomplish it through staff, volunteers, the site managers, the people that live there, the surrounding neighborhood groups. You can't go to a preserve anywhere else and not find a trash can at the entrance. In surrounding counties, in Florida, and other states. So I'd like the committee to consider that. I think it's a small, worst case, we could have Porter Service collecting the trash.
I would like to hear from Ross and Forrest about that. I know in many of the national parks, you bring out what you take in, and there's usually signage that tells you that, or you've given a brochure when you sign up at the park to go on any of their trails or whatever. So Forrest and Ross, maybe you can come back with a report unless you have something you'd like to say about his concerns now.
Well, we can look at that. We do follow what you're talking about, Jan. We prefer the pack in, pack out methods on our sites. We don't have a lot of trash on the preserves. There are some preserves that are used a little more heavily, and we do have garbage cans at a lot of our preserves, but it's a resource. If we could get by with volunteers, that would be fantastic. We don't have the staff to go out there and empty trash cans 2 times a week at all of our preserves, but it's something that I can work with Chris and Kurt, because he's one of our volunteers, looking into to see what we can do out there.
Okay, thank you. The land management update, anything else, Ross? You're just going to send everything out to us?
I'll send it all out, yep.
Okay, so now
Ross,
we're going to...
I actually did, I'm sorry, I had one other question.
Okay.
On the ADA parking pads, the second part of that project in the original presentation is signage. Is that being worked on?
What do you mean, Kurt, about signage? Like getting the ADA signs?
No, the federal requirement is that when you're bringing them onto the property with the parking pad, you have to let them know what trails are safe to go on and not go on for someone that's handicapped.
Yes, so that's what Chris is working with the group with. We're trying to figure out, because of course the majority of our trails are not going to be accessible. This was a code requirement and land development code requirement. This is why these are going in. So Chris is working with a group to figure out ways to make this properties inclusive, even if it's just a small picnic area near the entrance that everybody can get to. But yes, that will all be part of it, Kurt, absolutely.
And will parking pads be going in at future public access areas?
Yes. I want to say unfortunately in front of that, but yes, they will be.
Well, no, where I'm going from that there just needs to be a little better signage on how to use the parking spaces also. Because we were just talking about Bahia Beach. You go out there when there's just a few people hiking and they don't know how to park in relation to not block the handicap spot.
Correct. These handicap spots, of course, all of our parking areas were not planned to have these, but all future parking areas will take all of that into consideration. There'll be more space so that we have 5 to 10 vehicles plus an ADA parking spot with the appropriate room and markings and all of that stuff. But yes, I agree with you. All our smaller parking areas are having issues with people parking in the area where it's supposed to allow people in wheelchairs to get out of their cars and stuff like that. So yeah, we can work on all of that.
This is Pam Burnett. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Since I'm brand new here, what is the policy on stating about firearms? Because in Violet Curry, a year ago, we had I don't know how to put this politely, a few dead pigs, and some people thought they had the right to do that.
Well, all of our boundary markings make it clear that you're not allowed to shoot animals. It's on all of the walkthroughs where you come into the property. Now, I say it's on there, but people do love to rip down our signs as well. So if you do walk into the site and you don't see that, let me know. It's a picture. It also describes the activities that aren't allowed. And the firearm policy on all public lands are, if you have a concealed weapons permit, you are allowed to carry a gun on a preserve. Our local ordinances do not trump any state laws.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, I know. Violet Curry has 3 entrances and there are no signs.
Okay, well, I'll have Cheryl go look at that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, environmental programming update with Chris Kitty. Hey, Chris, let me say something first, briefly.
Yeah.
Recently on Fridays on Channel 13, we've seen several vignettes by Charlie Belcher and some of our conservation staff. And last Friday, they were at the Cypress Creek Preserve. And the young lady that talked with Charlie did a wonderful job. I'm not complaining about what she said. What I'm going to complain about vigorously is I would really like it if they announced when they go to any of the ELAPP sites and preserves that they announce that they bring it back to the public. So the public becomes more and more aware of the Jan K. Platt Acquisition Land Protection Program. And that because they've always supported us, but they need to see where their money's going. And I think it would be really nice if the staff could mention at some point, maybe just when they first start talking, that this is one of the county's properties that was purchased through the Environmental Land Acquisition and Protection Program. So in the future, I hope you will be able to do that. And I assume you have a list of future parks that Charlie Belcher is going to visit?
We don't have any in the workings right now, but I'm sure we'll have some coming down the road. It's kind of getting that hot season where Charlie is going to be trying to get into the AC. So I think when fall comes around, we're going to start doing a lot more stuff with Charlie again. But no, you're definitely right. And we do try to always mention the ELAPP program in all the media we do. That was Rebecca's first time doing live television, and I think she just, it escaped her that day. She did a wonderful, wonderful job. But no, we talked about that, and we do want to make sure that anytime our staff is on a nature preserve doing media coverage and in our conservation parks, that we mention the ELAPP program and everything that this program is doing to preserve land in the county. So
Okay.
no, I totally agree.
Okay, thank you. Chris Kitty?
Yep. Want to start off, I think Ross already mentioned this a little bit. This is something I'm really excited about. Our outreach team is now staffing Camp Bayou Preserve 3 days a week. They're doing a restoration there and be closing the 24th Avenue down, which meant that we needed to find another way to provide water access for the canoe launch folks out there. So that's the main reason our team is out there. But I think this is going to lead to some really big things in the future with our environmental education and our programming, because it gives us a home base with a classroom, with a visitor center, with nature exhibits that we can start doing our programming with school kids and stuff like that. So this is going to be the start to something really big, and I'm super, super excited about that.
Can you make that page bigger? I cannot read that.
This is just my agenda. This is my notes I'm just reading off of.
Yeah, but we can't see what.
I'm about to switch pages
That's
for the
good.
next topic here. So let me go over the next thing I want to talk about is our Prescribed Fire webpage is up and running. Where is my, got too many. Just give me a minute to get this screen. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to visit our Prescribed Fire webpage now. We've been working on this for about a year, trying to get all this up and running. It's a really nice little landing page, which provides the public with some really good answers to their questions about prescribed fire. More importantly, though, the coolest thing about this is that it has a prescribed burn notification for people. So people can click on this button and sign up for, if you can see my cursor there, people can click on that and sign up for email notifications whenever we do a prescribed burn. Just to help get the word out and let people know what is going on. We have a lot of new people moving to Hillsborough County who are not familiar with prescribed fire, who are scared by fire. And this is just another way we can get out the word to the community, let them know, hey, this is a good thing. And we want to have these fires. And let me bring up the email to show you what that looks like. It's a really good looking email. Can everybody see that still? Did it switch over? Prescribed fire notification.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, perfect. So this is the email whenever we do a fire now. I don't know how many of you know this, but we don't know. We have plans for every area we want to burn, all the burn units we want to burn, but we don't know if we'll actually be able to do a burn until the morning of a fire. So it's not like we can just put out a list of, hey, here's our schedule of fires. So what this system does, it allows us, when we get that notification in the morning that we got our permit to do the burn, and it lets us send out an email to anybody who signed up for the system and know where we're doing the burn, who the managers are, contact information if they have questions, the purpose of the burn. And this is a really nice feature for a lot of people who are planning on going hiking and doing things like that. It lets you know if any of the trails are closed or affected by that burn. So this has been really, we've got really good feedback from people who are into the hiking and don't want to be caught out in the middle of a property when a burn starts. In addition to that, we have included some of the FAQs in that email. So I hope all of you will go to that fire page and sign up for that and tell other people about that. We're also looking at adding social media and some other things to help get that word out even more to the select areas right around our burns. We're going to use an app, social media app called Nextdoor. So we're working on some stuff like that. So anybody in that zip code will actually get a notification through that Nextdoor app that we're doing a burn. Next thing I have on my list here, I'll go back to my agenda here so you all can see that. All right. Hiking spree is just wrapping up. It ends officially on March 31st. This has been the biggest year ever for the hiking spree. We had more than 7,000 participants register for the hiking spree. And it has not even completed yet, but people are already sending in their completion forms. And we've already had over 800 completions sent in. So we're going to go well over 1,000 completions this year, which by far, I think the most we've ever had in previous years is around 250 to 300 people who actually did at least 8 trails. So this is huge this year. With all the craziness of COVID, I think people really turned to our outdoor and our natural spaces, and it had provided the community with a lot of value. And a lot of people discovered some of our parks and preserves that they had no idea about. And this has been a huge year for the hiking spree. Lastly on my list here, we shut down all in-person environmental outreach programs on March 8th or 9th of last year. We were getting ready for a trail work day on a Friday evening, had the trucks all loaded up, and by 8 o'clock that night, we got the word that the program was canceled. And for almost 12 months, we had no live programming. Well, we are officially back doing live programming following COVID guidelines. And these are just the programs we had here in March. We did a sunset hike at Medard, a native planting at Cockroach Bay. We did a prescribed fire discussion with Sarah Finney from ABC News, a sunset hike at Lower Green Swamp, 2 Trailcat work days in March, 1 at Fishhawk, 1 at Double Branch, a sunset paddle at Camp Bayou Nature Preserve, a sunrise hike at Cypress Creek, which you saw on Charlie Belcher. And this is a virtual one. We gave a lecture to Slippery Rock University students about having a career in conservation job in the conservation world. And tomorrow or Wednesday, we are doing a guided hike with the Ollie USF group at Triple Creek. So that's the main bullet points. So we're just excited that our outreach programming is up and going again, and we're actually getting a chance to get out there and do in-person stuff with the public again. It's really exciting.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate your enthusiasm, and we always look forward to seeing you at a Friends of the Parks meeting too.
I love the Friends group.
Thank you. So I appreciate everyone and their tolerance for this meeting today.
This is Rob Northrop. I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
Yes. First off, I'd like to congratulate Chris and Ross and Forrest on swiftly moving the ELAPP program from the best kept secret in Hillsborough County to one that is now engaging and attempting to engage all communities within our county, including looking at how to increase and improve the diversity and equity and inclusion of all communities within their program. What they are doing is absolutely tremendous. Complete turnaround from 5 years ago. What Chris is doing with the newsletters and what they're doing with ADA sites and trying to work with creating bus stops that allow people who don't have cars to get at these nature preserves, to increasing the visibility of the ELAPP programs is absolutely critical to the long-term sustainability of the ELAPP program. Because in fact, the political body of the county was being pressured at one point to consider whether these lands were actually worth keeping and managing. But now they can begin to see that there is value to the citizens. And we should never underestimate what the crew is doing right now in terms of making this recognizable as an extremely important social value to the citizens of Hillsborough County. I just wanted to put that in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. We appreciate your comments and we all agree with you.
I have a comment
Joel?
real quick, just a couple of things, and I certainly appreciate the last comment. Thank you very much. I agree with you. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, when are we going to be able to resume our guided walks at Lettuce Lake Park and some of the other places? I mean, this is very important to us.
So, Joel, I'll answer that. We're looking to resume all special events, I'll say nearly all activities within our parks by May 3rd. I've got that approved through the county administrator. So in the next 4 weeks or so, any COVID restrictions that are out there within the parks, reserves, they will essentially be over with by May 3rd.
Thank you. And my second question is, I'm very concerned. I'm a volunteer at Cypress Creek Preserve. Okay, I don't work for Hillsborough County. I work for Pasco Swiftmud. And the point is that Swiftmud has a preserve called Cypress Creek Preserve. I work there as a volunteer. And then you have a Cypress Creek Preserve in Hillsborough County. They're not the same place. Why don't we change the name, like Cypress Creek South or South Cypress Creek and North Cypress Creek, or Lower Cypress Creek and Upper Cypress Creek to get them differentiated. It's very confusing to a lot of people. And that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Maybe we can change it to Hillsborough Cypress Creek, or Cypress Creek of Hillsborough or something. Straighten that. Okay, I want to let anyone else have a comment, but we have the committee that goes through and evaluates for the Theodore Roosevelt Awards had some issues, and they had planned to have a subcommittee meeting later to resolve those issues. And it had to do with people that had been previously nominated. Could they come forward? And I can't remember what else, but there were a couple of them. Now, after what has happened today, I am really concerned about several issues, and I had gone back and pulled up the ELAPP committees, especially the general committee voting in meetings. The quorum issue becomes very pertinent to us as we have more people coming on as prospective members and then meeting the requirements, and we keep adding to the general committee, which makes it so the quorum is higher and higher. And as you saw today, we had one person downstairs. Had he come up here, we would have been one short of a quorum. At any rate, I would like to ask if those of you who have served on the Theodore Roosevelt Awards subcommittee would consider reviewing these policies on the general committee voting and meetings. And perhaps we can have both committee meetings at the same time. One committee, then do the other committee, and line it up with the next general special committee so that we don't all have to be going all over the place too many days.
Consider amending our bylaws so our quorum requirements are 20% or 20%.
Yeah, you can do 20, 30, so we need to review these policies. And I think it'd be just as easy if we had a small subcommittee come back and make some recommendations. So,
just one suggestion, we may want to include Brandon Wagner from the county staff, because he has been doing a similar thing with other boards and councils.
Okay.
So if we could invite Brandon, that would be great.
So when you all have a date for us to have a special committee meeting, if we're going to have to do that, otherwise we're going to September and there's too many unanswered questions here. So if it could be in April or May before people go on vacations, and all hopefully vacations in May and June. And if those of you, some of you are here that serve on that Theodore Roosevelt Award, and of course anybody on the general committee may come, and members of the public may come. So I would really like it if we could line those up so we could have one to discuss the Theodore Roosevelt necessary things that we wanted to do. Then the same with our bylaws or policies. They may just be policies. They may not even be in the bylaws. I've talked to Commissioner White about it. He was very in tune with the way I was thinking, and he will support what we bring to the committee or the board. So if you can arrange this so that, would you all rather have separate meetings? Wouldn't it be better to just come down here
Three meetings in one day?
Yeah, on one day, 3 meetings. And each of those other meetings, one might take in a half an hour, one might take 5 minutes, and then the general committee. So if we could line them up in such a way.
How many bylaws, how many committees do we have that we need to have that discussion? The general committee?
This is just for the this is just general committee. And if you go on the site, you can find the general committee and rules.
You mean on the website?
And one of the things, yeah, I got it off the website. One of the things says the meetings are the second Monday of March and September. We need to remove the word Monday, the second Monday, because it may be the third or fourth or first Monday. So if we just say general meetings are March and September, and then special meetings may be called. So that's the kind of thing I think that needs to be resolved. So if you all are agreeable to do that.
Jan.
Yes.
With separating it into the Theodore, the ones of us that were on that, have been on that committee, I mean, the overall people need to,
It'll come back to the general committee.
to the general committee should decide both things,
No,
the
I
whole,
was
the
just
whole
trying
thing.
to streamline it, so they bring recommendations to the general committee for the changes to the policy. And it should be reasonably easy to do.
Yeah.
And I just thought the same committee that's already constituted could handle it. And again, just do it before the next regular or.
Plagiarize, folks. There's things out there we can plagiarize.
That's right.
You can even go down.
Plagiarize, don't change.
Right. So we need to look at that.
That's why I suggested bringing Brandon in, because he's
We
been
need to
doing
pick
it
a
for
date
other
for
boards
a
and
general
councils,
meeting
and
right
he can
now.
even do like all the common sense
Yeah.
things and go through.
And the Board of County Commissioners.
And does like the specific things that
Yeah.
are concerned.
So, some of the forums were 10%. Well, in the past, our meetings have lasted 2 hours. We've been out of here by 6, but we started on time.
But I think we also.
Today
had
was a little more
the
difficult.
challenge here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at how much of the agenda we got out because we couldn't vote. We would have been here.
Yeah, which is a good reason for this, to have this subcommittee.
Yeah.
So now, if anybody doesn't want to serve on that second committee discussion, feel free to say you
Now,
don't
should
want
the
to do it.
Theodore Roosevelt be listed under the ELAPP committees? Because it's not.
Yeah, we need to, it needs to be. Well, it's a subcommittee of this.
And should we choose a date for our special meeting right now?
I think we probably have to find out when staff can get a room and let us do it.
Plus they have to have public notice.
We have to have 2 weeks of public notice.
We're gonna need to do it soon.
Well, we can, if he's just gonna schedule it, she can submit some dates.
Okay, all right.
We'll see how much time
Keisha
Keisha
loves
has
that.
to dedicate to
Keisha
us.
is so busy now. He's given her too much work.
So as soon as possible within reason.
Agreeable. I think
Yeah.
we're all.
Yeah, and we need a room, and
But we did take
So-
care of Theodore Roosevelt.
The object is making sure people are.
Ross and Forrest, are you still there? Did you leave us?
We're still here.
Still here.
Are you agreeable to that discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, so you all can help us pick the dates to move all this stuff forward. The sooner the better, but I know that, do we still do a 2-week notification of a public meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
So it has to be probably the end of April.
But we're also gonna have to make sure that people who say they're gonna
They
come.
say they're gonna come now.
Well, it's a subcommittee, we don't have to have.
No.
If we, for the next meeting, we'll have to be under our current rules. But at that meeting, assuming a quorum, we can change the quorum numbers
Right.
as long as the county attorney will throw it at
Jan's
us.
here, it's a quorum.
Yeah. So we'll wait to hear from you all. You'll check with, Keisha always checks with me on schedule and Sally and sends emails around to everybody to see if they can come. So when you all have a chance to work it out, we'll be anxiously awaiting your suggested dates. Okay?
Sounds great.
Hey, if there's no other comment to come before this board, the meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Amen. Whoa.